We're going to start to say hello, and I've got my grand dog Bean here. He is a Chug, a Chihuahua Pug mix. Bean. Beanster. There he is. I have my headset in, so he can't hear you. But anyway, he's so funny.
I woke up my cats.
You did? Oh, yeah. All right, let me go let him out the door. Hang on one second, honey, okay? Hold on.
All righty.
Go ahead. So thank you for doing that little, whatever they're called.
Graphic.
Yeah, the graphic. Thank you so much, because I thought that was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
I did it for me, and then I went, I bet Pettenla would like this.
I do. I really do. I thought that was really pretty. And that was exactly, how I always use a quote from what we're working on for this particular lesson. And that was the quote that I was going to use. And so I already had that in mind. And when you sent it to me, I'm like, oh, that's so perfect. So thank you. So let me make a little note here so that everyone will know. Let's see. Let's go to 65 and wake up and just say, starting now. Everything works so much more slowly, doesn't it, when you feel like you're in a rush?
Yep.
Hello, Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, let me just make a little note.
It's cold in Northwest Oklahoma.
I bet. What's the temperature?
It's 32 right now, but we had an ice storm.
You did?
Yes, we didn't have school today.
Really? Okay, so yeah. I haven't had an ice storm in a very long time. What I like about it is how pretty it can be where all the little branches are covered. You see that?
Right. It wasn't really like that because it got above freezing, so it melted most of the ice, but there was probably an inch of ice on the roads. It was like super slick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my daughter
that's really scary.
Pick up her car, which is about half an hour from her house. But she had a loaner because something went wrong with her car yesterday on the way to work. So anyway, we were talking on the phone this afternoon, and she said, Mom, I got to go. There's supposed to be an ice storm. I got to go get there and get home before it starts.
Yeah, that's scary. I remember having to scrape my car all the time. In New Jersey, where I grew up on the shore, we didn't get snow often, but we got ice storms and sleet and freezing rain and all that. And that was worse than snow because it's really dangerous to drive on, and it's such a mess with your car because you have to chip things off. Hey, Jennifer, I'm so glad to see you here. You have to chip all the ice off. And I remember there was one time where I couldn't get in the car because the ice had frozen over the lock. And so I couldn't get into it to warm the car up to get all the rest of it to melt. So it was just a big old mess. And I do not miss that. But I do remember how pretty it was when it would get on all the little branches,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was neat. But then sometimes it'll kill the plants. Like I'm dealing with the other day, we went out and trimmed our garden out front, and I had to trim off a lot of the fronds from my palm tree because they got freezer burn on them. That's how cold it's been, and they just can't handle all that. So I had to cut down a lot of stuff, and I'm praying that it will come back. We'll see. We'll see if it'll work. Who is that? Who is owner?
Yeah. Who's owner?
Who is owner?
I don't know who owner is, but this is Jennifer Bishop from Moore, Oklahoma.
Hey, Jennifer, sweetheart. I'm glad to see you. I'm so glad you were able to make it.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll wait. There's a couple more people that are going to be coming on, I know. And who is that? That's owner? Come and say hello to us. At least let us hear your pretty voice.
Me.
Hey, hello. Do you know how to change your listing?
No.
You don't? Okay. If you hover over with your mouse, your name or owner, it'll give you an option to rename, and you can type in your name there. See if you can do that. There you go,
There
sweetie.
we go.
How are
So now
you?
we know we have Rose on. Hi,
Yes.
Rose.
Hi.
So how are you happy that you're in a warmer climate now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I bet you are. Good. Well, I'm glad to have you here, honey bun. Okay, so we've got a couple more that are telling me they're just running a couple minutes late. Anything new that's going on with you guys since I last saw you? Anything? No? Well, I just got back from the TAC trip. My husband Andy and I went to the Top Achievers Club in Cancun, and we did a lot of relaxation and recharging and spending time with good friends. We spent a lot of time with Marianne and Ken Niehaus and Tom and Denise Chenault, and we got to spend time with Derek Richards, who was the comedian. He's the guy that was the MC for like the last 15 years at all of our conventions. So if you've been to convention, you've seen Derek do his shtick, and he was terrific. But he's the one that did the bobblehead with Doc Wallach, if you've seen that video.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, it's hysterical. You have to do a search and look it up. It's really cute. But it's also about Derek traveling with the Doc Wallach bobblehead, and the Doc bobblehead gets more attention than Derek does. It's really cute.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really sweet. So anyway, so we spent a lot of time there. We were at the pool and on the beach, and we played volleyball both on the beach and in the pool. And that was really fun because we had like 20 or 30 people in the pool playing volleyball together. And that was hysterical. And so that was a lot of fun. And just, we got to witness Juan Carlos and Lily's wedding for our farewell party. And that was a special surprise and treat, something you just don't expect to have come up. But they got engaged at conference like 2 years ago. And so that was a really neat little treat. And they're just such an adorable couple. So we had a really great time. And I really think that if you have an opportunity to get to the TAC trip, you need to go. And their qualifications are still going. If you go to theyoungevityRC.com, you can see what the requirements are to get there. But what I recommend is, even if the timing is right that you're not going to, qualify in time, the activities or what you're needed to do to qualify for TAC are going to grow your business. So if you go there and look at the things that you need in order to get the qualification, it'll set you in a good place. Just like when we do the team challenges, those kinds of things will help to create the right activities that are going to help us to create the success, just like 65 and a Wake Up does. Because when you do these things consistently, you will have a return that's going to benefit you in your business. It'll benefit you personally, but it's going to benefit you in your business if you apply it that way. So, okay, so I'm going to mute everybody for now.
Okay, can I just say this before you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
I think the bobblehead video is on Frozen Photo, F-O-T-O, photography. Apparently that's something to do with Derek.
Okay. So Frozen Photo Photography is the name of the people who do his work, I guess, or he did it or something.
Yeah,
his
or
production.
something.
Perfect. Thank you, Linda, very much. Yeah, it's worth it. So Frozen Photo. So let's write that down here.
And photos, F-O-T-O.
And then photography.
Yes.
.com. So
It's Facebook page.
Oh, it's a Facebook page. Okay. So it's a Facebook page, but Frozen Photo Photography. Go take a peek at that and you'll get a big chuckle. All right, so I'm going to mute everybody and we're going to get started. And what we're doing is we're going to do a recap because it's been a while since I was away and because we're going to go into a new section. So of course we're doing The One Thing by Gary Keller, The Surprisingly Simple Truth Behind Extraordinary Results. And the first part was all about the lies. They mislead and derail us. And he goes on to tell us that the problem is we tend to act on what we believe in, even when what we believe isn't anything we should. And buying into the one thing becomes difficult because we've unfortunately bought into too many other things. The real solutions we seek are almost always hiding in plain sight. Unfortunately, they've usually been obscured by an unbelievable amount of bunk, an astounding flood of common sense that turns out to be nonsense. And over time, myths and truths get thrown around so often, they eventually feel familiar and start to sound like the truth. And he said that the challenge we face when forming our success strategies is that success even has its own lies, because things that we're told that successful people do are not necessarily true. And the 6 lies between you and success are: everything matters equally, multitasking, a disciplined life, willpower is always on will call, a balanced life, and big is bad. And these beliefs get into our heads and become operational principles driving us the wrong way. And if you want to maximize your potential, you need to put those lies to bed. So I just want to go through each one a little bit before we move on to the truth. And so everything matters equally. We are told, one second, that the big ideas at the end of the chapter, and that's what I'm going to go through, the big ideas at the end of each chapter. Go small. Focus on being productive. Allow what matters most to drive your day. Go extreme. That core activity goes at the top of your success list. Say no, and whether you say later or never, but say not now, to anything else you could do until your most important work is done. Then don't get trapped in the checkoff game, right? That's where we're doing our list and we think we're getting things done, but a lot of times those items on our list are things that really are not the thing we should be doing. So sometimes it's the first thing you do, sometimes it's the only thing you do. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Regardless, doing the most important thing is always the most important thing. And then for chapter 5, multitasking, the big items for that one are: distraction is natural. Okay, hold on. So distraction is natural. Everyone gets distracted. And multitasking takes a toll. Distractions lead to poor choices, painful mistakes, and unnecessary stress. Distraction undermines results. When you try to do too much at once, you can end up doing nothing well. Figure out what matters most in the moment and give it your undivided attention. Marianne is there. I see her in the background. And multitasking is impossible. It's never possible to do it effectively. Okay, then chapter 6 is about a disciplined life. Hi, honey. And in chapter 6, the big ideas are: don't be a disciplined person. Be a person of powerful habits and use selected discipline to develop them. Excuse me, build one habit at a time. Success is sequential, not simultaneous, okay? You need to focus on one thing and one thing only at a time. And then when you've accomplished that, or you've been able to achieve that, then you move on to the next. And then what you do is you develop a few significant habits, one at a time, over time. And again, this is why we built 65 days in a wake up, to be separated from the follow-up portion in the beginning, because you need to be good at the coffee shop interview first. And then the 1-3 way, which is a tool exclusively in the beginning. And then a 3-way call as you progress through the program. And we need to give each habit enough time. Stick with the discipline long enough for it to become routine. Habits on average take 66 days to form, hence 65 and a wake up. Once a habit is solidly established, you can either build on that habit or, if appropriate, build another one. And if you are what you repeatedly do, then achievement isn't an action you take, but a habit you forge into your life. You don't have to seek out success. Harness the power of selected discipline to build the right habit, and extraordinary results will find you. And again, through 65 and a wake up, we saw this happen when we were at that day 20, day 30, day 40, where all of a sudden we're tripping over ourselves. We start to say, oh my gosh, these people are coming to me, and now I don't have to worry about chasing after them. And that's the whole point, because we want to be providing what people are looking for, and we want them to be looking to us for the answers. We don't want to have to constantly be chasing them down. So chapter 7 was willpower is always on will call. That's a lie, right? And this I found to be really interesting, and it made me think about adrenals in the body. And that's something that is very important to understand, because you have two types of storehouses. So the big ideas are, don't spread your willpower too thin. You have a limited supply. Decide what matters and reserve your willpower for it. Monitor your fuel gauge. Full strength willpower requires a full tank. Never let what matters most be compromised simply because your brain was underfueled. Eat right and regularly. Time your task. Do what matters most first each day when your willpower is strongest. Maximum strength willpower means maximum success. Mind your motivation. Your motivation, attention, and beliefs about your willpower also impact your self-control. So that's talking about having the right mindset as you're preparing to go into your workday, as to do the things that are so important. You need to feel that confidence and belief about yourself and about what you're doing, so that you can go forward and have that willpower at maximum capacity. Don't fight your willpower. Build your days around how it works and let it do its part to build your life. Willpower may not be on will call, but when you use it first on what matters most, you can always count on it. Chapter 8 is a balanced life, right? Again, another lie. Okay. And the big ideas in a balanced life are think about two balancing buckets that you have. Separate your work life and your personal life into two distinct buckets, not to compartmentalize them, just for counterbalancing, because each habit has its own counterbalancing goals and approaches. So you have the two big ones, and then you have little things in between that are also needing to be counterbalanced. What else do we have? Oh, Vincent, welcome. So counterbalance your work bucket. View work as involving a skill or knowledge that must be mastered. This will cause you to give disproportionate time to your one thing. Hello, Colleen Richter. Your work life is divided into two distinct areas: what matters most and everything else. Right? So you, even within that work category, you've got the thing that's the most important and all the other stuff. So you have to make sure you use that willpower, use your strength and energy in the beginning to do the one thing that matters most. You will have to take what matters to the extremes and be okay with what happens to the rest. That's required. Excuse me. Counterbalance your personal life bucket. This requires a minimum of attention for you to feel that you have a life. It requires constant awareness. Never go too long or too far without counterbalancing them, so that they all are active areas of your life. So start leading a counterbalanced life. Let the right things take precedence when they should, and get the rest when you can. And chapter 9, big is bad, right? Because we hear about the big bad wolf and all these other things that you think are bad, and big is not bad. So, okay, big ideas. Think big. Avoid incremental thinking that simply asks, what do I do next? This is at best the slow lane to success. So you want to, and at worst, the off-ramp. This could not just be slowing you down, but taking you completely off the road to success. Ask bigger questions. Double down everywhere in your life. If your goal is 10, then ask the question, how can I reach 20? It's like the old story of, if I reach for the stars, I just might catch a cloud, right? But if you reach for a cloud, you might just reach a little bit above you, right? So you want to reach beyond. It's kind of like when my boys were in Taekwondo, when they would have to strike the boards to break them. You don't think about making contact with the board. You think about going through the board, right? Okay, because if you just think about hitting the board, you're going to break your hand. You need to go all the way through. And have you ever done that? Have you ever been somewhere where you misjudge your distance from something, and you go for a full swing to move or something, and you hit something so hard, no, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I could have broken the desk. It could have broken my arm, my head, whatever you hit it with. But it's that thing of, you thought that was nothing but empty space. And so you swung through it as if it were. And that's what you need to kind of think of, is reaching as far beyond as you can. Okay, so set a goal so far above what you want that you'll be building a plan that practically guarantees your original goal. Don't order from the menu. Be different, right? Ignore the menu and order your own creation. Imagine outcomes that no one else has. And then I love this quote: people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the only ones who do. Act bold. Big thoughts go nowhere without bold action. Once you've asked a big question, pause to imagine what life looks like with the answer. If you still can't imagine it, go study people who have already achieved it. That's like our Tom and Denise, our mentors in the 65 and a Wake Up. Let's see. What are the models, systems, habits, and relationships of other people who have found the answer? Why reinvent the wheel? Why repave the path? Follow the one that is tried and true, that we know actually works. What consistently works for others will almost always work for us, and that's if we apply them correctly. Don't fear failure. Adopt a growth mindset, and don't be afraid of where it can take you. Extraordinary results are built on failures too. We fail our way to success. When we fail, we stop, ask what we need to do to succeed, learn from our mistakes, and grow. And what I always say is, the only failure that doesn't lead to success is the one that makes you stop. So don't worry. We're going to make mistakes along the way. Just as Tom teaches us, plan, do, review. You're going to plan out your course of action. You're going to follow through and do it. And then you're going to review the results and see if the things that you were doing were working, or see if there are some things that were not working that you need to modify, right? So plan, do, review. That should be a constant thing that you're doing, and it's okay. So you see something that happens, you go, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be really terrific, and it really didn't work at all. And I think that in and of itself is a level of humility that we all should be able to have. That ability to stop and think, you know what, I thought I had this right, but I obviously need to make a change. Okay. Don't let small thinking cut your life down to size. Think big, aim high, act bold, and see just how big you can blow up your life. Okay, so that's the end of part one, the lies, they mislead and derail us. Does anyone have any questions or comments for that before we begin part two, the truth, the simple path to productivity? Anybody have anything? No, we're good? Okay, let's go on. So, with the introduction, be careful how you interpret the world. It is like that. And that's terrific. So here we go, that Gary Keller tells us, I began my career assuming everything mattered equally. So in an effort to cram it all in, I attempted too much at once. Frustrated, I eventually began to doubt I had the discipline or will to achieve success at all. Who's ever had that feeling? Me, I've had that feeling, right? You begin to go, oh, I just can't pull this off. As my life continually fell out of balance, I started to consider that trying to live a big life might be a bad thing. When you try to live up to something that isn't possible, you can get pretty down. And he said he was pretty down. In an attempt to make it all work, I began to bear down even harder. I started to clench my way to success. Your jaw is clenched. Your fists are clenched. Your stomach is clenched. Your butt is clenched. The whole thing, it just, can you imagine? And you're trying to convince somebody to do what you're doing, and don't you just look so excited to do it? And everything is just all uptight and a big mess. People will go running mad into the streets, right? So he's leaning forward, breath held and body taut, tight, totally tense. He said he did find success, but it also put him in the hospital. Your body can't handle that. It's not normal. Like I said, we just got back from a wonderful trip where Andy and I were hanging out with Marianne and Ken, and we were relaxing. We enjoyed it. It was wonderful. We shared stories about stuff in our lives and about things in our business and just had a good time. And it's so important to do that because you need to have that space of peace. And you should carry that with you as you go through your business as well, because you sure are going to end up in the hospital if you end up trying to clench everything up like that. It just doesn't work. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you a story about training that I had through the Upledger Institute, Dr. John Upledger, and he's the one that I was able to do the dolphin therapy with in the Bahamas, where we worked with dolphins in the water working on patients. So we had like 5 people and a dolphin who was the lead therapist, and we're working in the water. And through the training I had with Dr. Upledger, there's actually a theory, and most of American doctors believe that the skull is completely fused in children by the age of 5. Okay, but actually there are a series of fissures in the brain that are really specialized joints. And what was really interesting is Dr. Upledger has kind of brought this out, and he was talking about these 2 men that did work prior to his, that he ties into the craniosacral therapy that I was trained in by him. And he was actually teaching in Europe, and he was ready for them to all go nuts because he was explaining to them about these specialized joints. And it was like crickets in the room because they're looking at him like, you're telling us something we already know. Is like, we believe that. But in America, they believe it's fused. Well, there was this doctor that wanted to show that the fusion of those bones in the head is actually not true. So what he did is he used one of those old-fashioned leather football helmets, right? Put it on his head, and his wife, who was a nurse, she was monitoring him to see how he would behave, but used a vise and clamped his head and clamped this vise onto his head and squeezed it gently. We didn't want to pop him like a pimple, but she squeezed his head to a point so that there couldn't be any movement. And there's this thing called a craniosacral rhythm that is a very, very delicate flow, and it kind of expands and contracts. And so when you do craniosacral work, you're working with this. It's almost like a breathing or a heart rate, but it's really very delicate and really very slow. And so by putting this pressure on, it was not allowing the skull to expand and contract. You know how when you have a headache and you feel like your head is pounding, right? Well, it was that kind of a thing. And what his behavior changed by being clenched by this vice is that it really was driving him mad. And so that's what I think of when he talks about clenching everything and how it made him sick. And it's, your body isn't intended to do that. There needs to be this ability to breathe and move. Excuse me. So I hope that helped give you a little bit of a visual understanding and learn a little bit about your body too. So, okay, so then he goes on to say, I began to think you had to talk like a success, walk like a success, and even dress for success. And Tom Chenault just recently was questioned by somebody who said, gee, you don't dress like you're a rich guy. And he's like, well, gee, I'm really not a rich guy. I don't do that. But what's really terrific is that this whole preconceived notion of what we're supposed to do and look like and be is just that. It's a preconceived notion, something from the past, something we don't have to do anymore. Women don't wear gloves. Men don't wear hats. All these things over the course of time have changed and shifted. We just need to kind of let go a little bit, kind of chill out and not be so uptight. So he goes on to say, I took seriously the suggestion that you are supposed to project the way you want to be. I simply got tired of playing success. I was going overboard. In the end, it pushed me too hard, others too far, and my world over the edge. Because what are we trying to do when we're talking to people, right? We're trying to relate with them, connect with them on their level, make this seem like it's something that they could easily do. We don't want to make it seem like they have to behave differently in order to be successful. We want them to be themselves, right? We want to be able to connect with them on that kind of a level. So he said, I was truly beginning to think that the secret to success was to get as tightly wound up as possible each morning, set myself on fire, right? And then open the door and fly through the day, unwinding on the world until I literally burnt out. It got me success and it got me sick. Eventually, it got me sick of success. I ditched the lies and went in the opposite direction. First off, I got unclenched, right? So you loosened up. Everybody got loosey-goosey. Started listening to my body, slowed down, and chilled out. He started wearing t-shirts and jeans to work. He dropped the language and the attitude and went back just to being himself. Just be you. He had breakfast with his family, got in shape physically and spiritually, started doing less. And he said, yes, less, intentionally, purposefully less. He said he was looser than ever, laid back for him and breathing. He said he became more successful than he ever dreamed possible and felt better than he'd ever felt in his life. And he said, here's what I found out. We overthink, overplan, and overanalyze our careers, our businesses, and our lives. Long hours are neither virtuous nor healthy. We usually succeed in spite of most of what we do, not because of it. He discovered that we can't manage time. The key to success isn't in all the things we do, but in the handful of things we do well. Success comes down to this: being appropriate in the moments of your life. And he said, this is where I'm meant to be right now, doing exactly what I'm doing. Then all the amazing possibilities for your life become possible. The one thing is the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results. So now we're going to go into chapter 10, which is about the focusing question. And this is really the center of this book. And when we were talking about this book being a part of our study, Marianne was mentioning about a quote, and the quote is what's in here. And Linda did a beautiful job of creating that graphic for us to use to post in Facebook to see the pretty graphic of this particular quote by Gary Keller. So let's continue. There is an art to clearing away the clutter and focusing on what matters most. Simple, transferable, requires the courage to take a different approach. And then he goes on to talk about Andrew Carnegie, who was addressing a college in 1885. And just if you don't know, Carnegie was a steel company that was the largest and most profitable industrial enterprise in the world. He was the second richest man in history after John D. Rockefeller. And in Carnegie's talk, which was entitled The Road to Business Success, he said, this is the prime condition of success. Concentrate your energy, thought, and capital exclusively upon the business in which you are engaged. Begin on one line, resolve to fight it out on that line. Adopt every improvement, have the best, he says machinery, but I put in tools, right? You need the best tools, things like rapid funnel, right? Things like contact mapping, things like the Longevity University. These are tools that we need. And then know the most about it. And he said the concerns which fail are those which have scattered their capital, scattered their brains. And he said put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. Look around you and take notice. It's easy to watch and carry one basket. Trying to carry too many baskets that break most eggs in the country. And that's interesting because when you look at longevity, we have a lot of baskets, right? We've got a lot of verticals. We've got all kinds of different products. However, there is something for everyone, but you should always try and focus, right? You always have kind of one thing that is the most important part of your passion, of what thing that you find to be most successful for you. And the more you focus on that, you have an ability to be able to express yourself in a very, very productive and professional manner. You need to know something about the other verticals to be able to converse with people, but you also need to have those resources to know who can I talk to about for tails only? Who can I talk to about mineral makeup? Who can I talk to about Mia Alicia jewelry? Where can I go to see the catalogs? You know, things like that. So if you have an idea of all those, but you focus on your passion, the coffee, for example, you know, whatever it is for you, that's where you kind of want to keep your wheelhouse, but then just have the ability to know how to reach into the other basket and say, oh, I have this person. Remember, you've got someone there that can be a resource for you. And that's another thing about 65 and a Wake Up. It is about the community and being able to talk to people and say, you know what, I know exactly the person who you can relate to about that because they had a very similar situation. Would you mind if you hold on for a second? I'll get them on the phone. I mean, really keep it very simple and keep it about them. Okay. So Mark Twain, whose name was Samuel Clemens, he actually came from Hannibal, Missouri, which is where my mom and my grandma were born and raised. He wrote, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret to getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks and then starting on the first one." And hear how we're seeing this over and over again. There's this secret. There's this one thing. It's a place to begin, the right place to begin. Then we talk about the Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. If this is true, then the wrong first step begins a journey that could end as far as 2,000 miles from where you want to be. So the whole thing is the focusing question helps to keep your first step from being a misstep. And the quality of any answer is directly determined by the quality of the question. Voltaire wrote, "Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers." Sir Francis Bacon said, "A prudent question is one half of wisdom." The other half, I guess, would be the answer. Indira Gandhi concluded, "The power to question is the basis of all human progress," right? Because you need to ask questions in order to get to know something better, to better yourself, to create a better understanding. And the scientific method asks questions of the universe in hypothesis form. And more than 2,000 years ago, Socrates created the Socratic method, teaching through questions. Excuse me. Questions engage our critical thinking. Asking questions improves learning and performance by as much as 150%. Nancy Willard wrote, "Sometimes questions are more important than answers." And then we have a poem by J.B. Rittenhouse, and this is really beautiful. "I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid." Wow. Stop selling yourself short, right? Start really thinking about your value and setting it higher than you ever imagined, because life will pay it to you. God is no respecter of persons, right? We're all created with the same ability. with the same chance, right? And so it's what we allow to have happen, what we allow to be set into motion by our own thoughts, by our mindset. We restrict ourselves and we don't need to. And I thought that was just so beautiful. One of the most empowering moments of Gary's life, he goes on to say, came when he realized that life is a question and how we live it is our answer, right? So that's where you need to be able to pause and see the situations that arise in your life and think about the options of how to respond to it, right? There are too many people who are reactionary. And a lot of times our reactions are built upon the behaviors that we've had over the years because of relationships in our early childhood, you know, all that stuff that we think is true, those lies that we were told by our family that we don't matter, that things don't belong to us, that we don't have the right to want something, that we don't deserve it. All these little things is that guy that sits on your shoulder that Tom says we need to punch in the nose, right? Those are recordings from something or someone in our past. It could have been a coach at school. It could have been a mother or a father. It could have been a sibling. It could have been a boss. It could have been anybody. And all these things that held you back were merely belief systems that you've been fooled into thinking are true, right? So, how we phrase the questions we ask ourselves determines the answers that eventually become our life. So not only are you in control of the answers, you're also in control of the questions. That's so cool. So there's no fear. There's no need to be fearful because you've got it. God's given you this ability and given you all these options, and you have all these choices that you can make, and it's only limited by your own beliefs. So the right question isn't always so obvious. Most things we want don't come with a roadmap or a set of instructions. Anyone who's a new parent can know that, you know, these babies show up, and now I look at the next generation of thinking of kids when they're having children, and just that novelty of having a brand new baby and having no idea what to do with them when they come home. It's just so funny. So, clarity, and this is a big word for me for this year. Clarity must come from us. All right? So we provide the answers, we ask the questions, and we create our own clarity. Boy, don't you feel powerful? How do you come up with uncommon questions that take you to uncommon answers? And this is the one question you ask, the focusing question. Anyone who dreams of an uncommon life eventually discovers there is no choice but to seek an uncommon approach to living it. The focusing question is that uncommon approach. In a world of no instructions, it becomes the simple formula for finding exceptional answers that lead to extraordinary results. And this is the quote. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? That's the center. That is the focusing question. Excuse me. It is so deceptively simple that its power is easily dismissed by anyone who doesn't closely examine it. So we have to think about it, that there are two parts to this. There's a big picture. Where am I going? And what target should I aim for? But there's also a small focus. And that is, what must I do right now to be on the path to getting to the big picture? And if you remember from one of our past lessons, I was telling you about Mark Januszewski had given me part of a training program where he talks about, don't look at the clock, look at the compass. You want to make sure you're headed in the right direction. It doesn't matter how long you get there. As long as you're making progress and making a positive change, you should feel good about yourself. And so allowing yourself to have that time and ability to make small progressions should give you that positive feeling that you have the ability to be successful on bigger levels. So just take one little step at a time, but make sure that those steps are in the right direction, right? Okay, so let's see. It shows you how big your life can be and just how small you must go to get there. Extraordinary results are rarely happenstance. They come from the choices we make and the actions we take. Focusing question always aims you in the absolute best of both by forcing you to do what is essential to success. Make a decision. Have you ever been at the point where you just can't decide what you want to do? Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do? Just do something, right? Just do it, right? And it drives you, but not just any decision. You want to be driven to make the best decision. It ignores what is doable and drills down to what is necessary. It leads you to the first domino. And remember, that first domino is the starting point for doing tremendous things. So to stay on track for the best possible day, month, year, or career, you must keep asking the focusing question over and over and over again. It forces you to line up tasks in their levered order of importance so that each time you ask it, you see your next priority. You're setting yourself up to accomplish one task on top of another. When you do the right task first, you also build the right mindset first, the right skill first, the right relationship first. Powered by the focusing question, your actions become a natural progression of building one right thing on top of the previous right thing. When this happens, you're in position to experience the power of the domino effect. And so let's kind of dissect the question, right? Let's look at the anatomy of it. The focusing question collapses all possible questions into one. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Part one. What's the one thing I can do? This sparks focused action. It forces you towards something specific. The phrase can do is directing you to take action that is possible. There are many things we should, could, or would do, but never do. Action you can do beats intention every time. So break it down into the things you can do. Don't put yourself into a position where you're looking too much at the big picture and you just can't even get out the door. You need to start one little step at a time, right? Those woulda, coulda, shouldas all ran away and hid from one little did. That was so cute, Shel Silverstein. Part two, such that by doing it, it's the bridge between just doing something and doing something for a specific purpose. You're going to have to dig deep because when you do this one thing, something else is going to happen. So just be ready. And I've talked to people about this all the time when you know, God has a plan and he puts the plan into action for you. And sometimes you have to wait for God's timing to be perfect because our timing is not. And when God's timing is perfect, be ready because it's going to make things move and move fast. God doesn't do anything small. So be prepared when you start doing these things in the right way. All of a sudden, big things will be ready to happen. And that's where we talk about the domino. We have the little domino and a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. And then you're able to knock them all over from the power of that one little domino because of the force that you've created through the built upon actions over the course of time and the efforts that you've made. Okay. Part three, everything else will be easier or unnecessary. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and I could move the world. That's the ultimate leverage test. The question, it tells you when you found the first domino. Everything else you could do to accomplish your goal will now be either doable with less effort or no longer even necessary. Declutter your life by asking you to put on blinders, doing the leverage thing and avoiding distractions. So focus, focus, focus. I talk with people about this on my team. Stuff will come up, okay? Especially if you have historical things that you are known to be easily distracted by. You want to make sure that when those distractions come up, it's kind of like the horses that you see on the road when they're have the carriage, and you'll see them with those blinders on because they would be too easily distracted. And so you need to keep that focus like a laser in front of you, doing the one thing that is most important at this particular time that's going to get you that first domino to start to move, right? Okay. Let's see. The focusing question also asks you to find the first domino and focus on it exclusively until you knock it over, right? So keep going, keep going, keep going until you finally get that one knocked over. That's why in 65 Days in a Wake Up, when we have the chance to go back to day one and start again, right? It's because you need that practice. You need more times to have an opportunity, because at first, if you can just imagine at first, that little domino feels like this, and you're pushing and pushing and pushing this gigantic domino because you feel like it's so huge. But the truth is, if you just use a little bit of leverage, you have the ability to push over this domino that you feel like is massive. And truthfully, it's just this little thing. And so you create the right force to make it fall over. And then there's a bigger domino that now you have the will, you have the strength, you have the ability. And again, for each one, right? And all of a sudden you look back and you go, wow, that wasn't so bad after all. I thought that was insurmountable. I couldn't even manage that. Like what I did when I started 65 and a Wake Up, how am I going to find 2 people every day to talk to? I'm going to annoy the heck out of somebody that doesn't even want to talk to me. And what about that 3-way? Oh, forget about that. It's never going to happen. And all of a sudden it just comes together, right? Okay, so now we can knock over that domino. You'll discover a line of dominoes behind it, either ready to fall or already down. Hey, Miss Emily. Hey, Henny Bun. All right, so the big ideas for this chapter. Great questions are the path to great answers. It will help you find that first domino for your job, your business, or any other area in which you want to achieve extraordinary results. The focusing question is a double duty question. Big picture and small focus. Finding the right direction and finding the right action. The big picture question, what's my one thing? It is your strategy compass. Remember, the compass is going to point you in the right direction. When considering what you want to master, it keeps your relationships with friends, family, and colleagues in perspective and your daily actions on track. The small focus question, what's my one thing right now? Use this when you first wake up and throughout the day. It keeps you focused on your most important work and helps you find the levered action or first domino in any activity. It's keeping you attentive to your most important immediate needs as well as those of the most important people in your life. And then you're going to plot your course through life and business. Asking the focusing question is the ultimate success habit for your life. And that's the end of chapter 10. So what questions, comments do any of you guys have? You can either chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself. Jump on in.
Does anybody have anything? Does Pamela just do an awesome job? You should be one of those people that read books, the Audible.
Well, I really did love reading books to my kids, and I think that the more dramatic you make it, the easier it is for them to remain engaged and to learn something. So
No, it's perfect. And I read to my kids all the time. So it was fun. I love it. Yeah, I just, a lot of things that I was thinking about when you were going through this and about those questions, right? Asking, and it's about asking ourselves the right questions. And so when you were talking about clarity, I talked a lot about that earlier when I did the Dan Walshman, 30 days. I realized I needed to get more clarity around my business and things that I wanted to be doing. And then you start doing things and then you get overwhelmed because you're putting, too much emphasis on all this other stuff. And really, I think we do complicate it. We complicate it a lot. And then what that does is it just slows us down. And so by asking yourself this question, what's the one thing I can do? Or how I need to focus on this because I know I need to accomplish this in order to move to that next thing. And then there's the domino happening. And one of the things when you talked about rapid funnel too, and those of you that have been on some of the calls and you've heard about this app, what I see it allowing me to do, because when I wanted to focus more on follow-up this year. Last year I focused on leadership with love. That was my theme for the year. And I read a lot of books around leadership and how to do it, with empathy. I think kind of like what he was talking about earlier, he was so flipping clenched. You're working so hard trying to get everybody to do this business who as hard as you're doing it, but they're not. And so, but you still love these people, right? And so when people get to that point and they're ready to jump in, and it's just ironic, I'm going to talk about this really quick. I had a guy join my business with a CEO pack. So excited. He was like, I'm going to rock this and yada, yada, yada. Every day, another question, another complaint, another question, another complaint. Well, how come Longevity doesn't have this? How come they do that? How come the oils are so expensive? Da, 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 da. I'm not going to do Longevity anymore. Okay.
I thought that was my guy. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah. And he's like, and so I just loved on him. I'm like, all right, well, you got to do what you got to do. And so anyway, then boop, all of a sudden he's back in. This has gone on for 2 flipping years. Finally, he said to me, you know what, I'm just done. I can't stand the taste of the products. I'm just not doing it. And I'm like, all right. And I said, every now and then, like I saw something, because of the shooting, in Vegas and stuff, because he lives in Vegas. So, I reached out to him, wanted to make sure everybody was okay, everybody's fine. Tonight, while I'm on this call, he sends me a fake Facebook message. I'm having some severe knee pain and I'm not able to get rid of it. I think Longevity is going to help. And I just talked to a lady who I think she wants to, do this. And suddenly he's back in again. So.
Well, now his taste buds don't matter anymore. When you're in so much pain, it doesn't quite matter how much.
Yeah, right. And he's a physical therapist. So he does a lot of stuff, he's got to be, anyway, but it's just interesting because as he probably had to ask himself the question, how am I going to get rid of this pain? What's the one thing I can do to get rid of this pain, right?
Right.
And it's going to have to be jump back into Longevity, I guess. But anyway.
That's good news.
We digress. Yes. Yeah, no, it's great news. And that's what I wanted to say about how, a lot of times we just have to love people through life. And so that was kind of my focus last year, is learning how to be a leader, with love. Right. And so this year, my focus is clarity. I want to get more clarity in my business, more. And so when I was going through all of the things, like, what's the one thing? Okay. I'm asking myself these questions, right? Because I read this book. It's like my second or third time. What's the one thing I can do that is going to help grow my business? And so, wow, look at that follow-up. How can I go about that? And then I call a friend of mine and he says, we've developed this app. And I said, really? He goes, are you still doing network marketing? And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, well, this app was designed just for network marketers. And I said, really? And what is it all around? Follow-up. So while 65 and a Wake Up has helped me, and prior to that, because I've been doing contact mapping for a long time, has built this huge database, right, that most people don't have. You guys that have been on 65 and Wake Up, now you understand. You understand what it's like to have somebody to talk to every single day out, instead of sitting around going, I don't know who I'm going to talk to today. Now I'm like, who am I going to follow up with today. And so what this app has allowed me to do, and Pamela was sweet enough to post that in there, is really set stuff. And so I'm just whipping through this app and I'm putting this person in, and I'm going to follow them up here, and I'm going to send them this, tool or what have you. And so really asking yourself, what's the one thing I can be doing that could really grow my business? Now, you're in business for a while. We have downlines. I know Pamela has a big downline. I have a big downline. And so there's also the retention side of it, right? There's also that keeping people in, if once people fall away, it's just like going to the gym. If you don't go to the gym for a week, it starts to get a little bit harder to go back to the gym. I went to the gym tonight, and second night in a row, and I felt like when I got back from Cancun that I had walked so flippin' much. I played so much volleyball, I didn't need to work out for about a day.
Right?
Again, that's the focus that, Ken and I are like, we want to work out this year, and we're doing it together, and I'm really excited about that. So what's the one thing I could do to help improve my health, right? What's that one thing? So, partnering with my husband and working out. So I think we do tend to make things too complicated, and I'm kind of rambling here, but hopefully you're getting something out
absolutely.
of it
We love it.
about how in asking yourself in your business these questions so that you know more where to focus, and instead of doing all that busy work, instead of, and the other thing, what I want to talk about is being able to live with chaos, because I have so much chaos around me all the time. And so for me to be able to focus and not look over here where I have a pile of crap that I need to go through, right? Because I need to be able to focus on what it is I want to accomplish. That crap will be there, forever until it's ready for me to focus on it. So that's kind of all I wanted to say, but I love you guys being on here. And Pamela, thank you so much. You did a great job. Anybody else, now that I've rattled on?
No, that was great. Yeah, anybody else? And I'm going to go grab a guest. So hang on 1 second.
Okay.
While she's gone, I'll talk a little bit. I'm going to camp off of what you said, Mary, on this morning on Hair on Fire call, when Tom was talking about those two guys at the coffee shop. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So for those who weren't on the call, Tom was about to walk into the coffee shop this morning, and he saw two guys he had talked to a long time ago. And so he backs out of the coffee shop. He goes in his contact mapping thing. He looks up the information on these two guys. And he said he didn't know their names, but he had put in some different details about them, probably Red Frog, and looked up Red Frog. And so he was able to find out who these two guys were, information he had put in his phone about them. And so he walked in, hi, so-and-so, hi, so-and-so, how's this going? And they were like, whoa, what a memory.
Right. I know. And having those, oh, wait a minute, my alarm's going off.
He's getting feisty, so you just have to say hello. So everybody say hi to Bean. Wait, hold on.
Bean. Oh, okay, I'm going to bring over Boo. Come here.
Bean. Oh.
Okay.
That's my granddog. Oh, you have your granddog too.
It's my grandpuppy. Yeah. But I got to show you. If you could, oh, he's like grunting. Oh. But I don't know if you could see this, but he's got skull and crossbones on his sweater. He's a little badass.
Oh, he is.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he looks badass. Yeah. Just like my little bean, my beanster. Oh, so funny.
All right. That's another book, a great book.
Is what?
Hold on here. Can you read it? Oh, you're muted. We got muted.
There we go. I'm sorry. Yes, that's, you know what? How do you get your camera to read the right way? Because look.
I don't know.
Mine does this. Look.
Oh. No, it's right. It looks right to us.
It looks right to you?
Does this look right? Does this
Yes.
look right to you guys? Because it looks backwards to me.
Oh, see, it looks backwards to me. And so I thought it looked backwards to you guys.
No, this is You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. Right.
Very
Jen.
cool.
It's an awesome book.
Jen Sincero, is that it?
Jen Sincero.
Perfect. All right, kiddos. Anybody else?
As I worked through this book, and especially that last chapter, and started asking some questions, I really began to hone in on what I need to do business-wise and what needs to be set aside or done differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it really helped me to do that. So I have questions for somebody. I was going to call Tom today because he said, I got the whole day free, call me, and that didn't work out. But I need to.
What were your questions?
Well, when I really looked at this and was asking the questions about what is my big thing I have to do, and my big thing is not longevity. God called me to teach women how to be keepers at home, and that includes longevity, because some will need an income to stay home, but it is not my big thing. My big thing is teaching them how to financially come home. And there are a lot of parts to that. And so my big next step is to get certified by Dave Ramsey and have that available to me. I have a lot of the other certifications and qualifications. I was an accountant. I was a homemaker. I budgeted well. My first husband passed away. I had to live on the stipend for 2 years before my daughter went off to school, and that was really hard, but I learned how to budget really, really well. So I got some of that. I taught biblical homemaking. I've been to culinary school. I had my own organic baking company. I've got all these things that I can help them with. But my next step has to be get the certification and learn how to speak in, I already know how to speak in groups, but how to get the speaking engagements and how to do the one-on-one counseling better, and with his proven system. That was part of what was holding me back. Was I was sitting there going, I've got to write my own budgeting things and my own this and my own that, and here they all have that in place.
Yeah, he's really certified, fascinating. Yeah, I love Dave Ramsey. We actually use the Every Dollar app ourselves, and my husband is a big follower of Dave Ramsey, and it's really great to live within your means and not have any debt, and go through the baby steps and all that. It's really phenomenal, and just the fact that he does it all with a biblical foundation is really fabulous.
Right.
And so I love that. And that is really wonderful. And I love the idea that you can use longevity for your bigger purpose to help women to be able to be home with their families, because it's so important. We see the horrible things that are happening in the world and how necessary it is to have that core family, to give them the security that they need. And using longevity not just as a financial support, but also a nutritional support to make sure that they're getting, the necessary nutrients in their children and in themselves as they are bearing children. Because when we read Doc's message, and I love the fact that he always referenced that this is a God-given gift, that he didn't just come up with something as an 8-year-old boy to treat himself with the farm animal supplements, but that was something that was it was a divine intervention that God gave him that wisdom and discernment to make that choice. And so I love that. So I'm very glad to hear, Linda, that you are able to, through this book, to be able to create the focus you need to figure out what your one thing is, and those other that's your direction, the where you need to go, and then the little things you need to do in order to get there. So absolutely, I'm happy for you.
Yeah. So my focus won't be building a team. I need to find leaders in different verticals who will work it themselves and be there for me as a resource to connect with women I come in contact with. But to be there and mentoring them, I won't have the time to do that. My focus has to be on finishing the certification and then going out and doing the teaching.
And providing them with the tools so that they can be that strength of leadership team for you. That's what you need to be able to point them to, making sure you point them in the right direction so that they can focus on their one thing.
Right.
Yeah, good. Very good. Well, thank you. All right, guys, so we've gone over a little bit. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring in a little bit to this, or shall we just convene and then we will see each other next week? That's it. All right, I'm going to unmute everybody so we can say goodbye. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. And just, oh, by the way, next week we will cover chapters. We'll cover chapters 11 and 12, the success habit and the path to great answers. So we'll finish up the truth next week. And then after that, we'll go into part 3. So we'll do chapters 11 and 12 next week.
All right, perfect. Thanks, you guys. Love you guys.
Thank you. Love you all. God bless.
To be here, guys. Be here. See you guys next week.
All right.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.